Hello, everybody. It's APL. If you have been following my channel for any time, you probably know that I really like 1950s science fiction movies, specifically American ones. And I've done a few videos on them, or at least talking about them. There was the 20th Century Gems videos on like War of the Worlds and such. But lately I've been watching a few more, and also because I've been reading this book called Keep Watching the Skies by Bill Warren, and it's American science fiction movies of the 50s. And just because I've been going through that and watching some of them, I've been thinking about why I like those movies so much. And it's interesting too because when I was getting really into science fiction and movies growing up, I grew up watching Lost in Space and a lot of older movies. So off the bat, it was I was conditioned to like older movies, and then it became sort of a nostalgic thing. But the factor that kept bringing me back was when I would go into newer movies or more recent films, especially science fiction films. They were, I don't know, in a way, harsher, more. I would get bowled over by like the special effects, when I was discovering in my teens like the Alien movies and The Thing, the remake. Stuff like that. I kind of pushed aside the 50s science fiction films for a while because I'm just like, oh, why do I want that? But I kind of sucked those films dry, the later films from like the 80s and 90s. And I've been thinking about why I haven't really returned to them much lately. Maybe I will at a later date, but it was the fact that I think that I'd gotten out of them what I could, and it was a lot of gloss, a lot of, good special effects. But ultimately, those films lacked some of the sincerity. They were a bit nastier, especially The Thing. And then I started drifting back to the older science fiction films and thinking, oh, okay, this has more of the sincerity and stuff, and the special effects, as I've talked about before, the whole deal with special effects. For some people, it can be harder to get into those older movies, but I think you just have to be able to meet the movie where it is. Meet it, with your imagination or something, whatever you need to do to get over that hurdle. Because so much of what's in that movie, those movies are winning. Like Forbidden Planet, I recently rewatched that again. It's one of my favorite movies, and it'll always be great. The handling of the concepts, just taking you through this world, especially after I've watched a bunch of other movies from the period, it sticks out in a glorious way. And then just a lot of things about that film that are surprising and wonderful that they happened. But it's the high mark of 50s SF films. So, and I got really into that movie when I was younger, and everything else paled in comparison, more or less. So what I was looking for was another Forbidden Planet. And more or less, I haven't really found it. Star Trek is sort of, I guess you could say, comes along. Like Star Trek, the motion picture, gives me a lot of similar, things that I, enjoy about Forbidden Planet. But, and then there's other films that I liked, like The Day the Earth Stood Still. I don't really like it as much now, and I have a whole video talking about it and why. I'm like, it's not one of my favorites, but it's still really really good. And then the Thing from Another World, I love that film more now because of just the light, like the characters are more likable for sure, and the situation they're in, and just, you really get into being like in that environment, that claustrophobic environment. But there's parts where it's like you're enjoying being cooped up with these people who are just trying to like solve this problem. And other films like War of the Worlds, the George Pal produced War of the Worlds, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And that film has a very emotional resonance for me. Something about it, just every time I watch the movie, by the end, I'm very moved by it. And the special effects are beautiful, unique. That's the thing about these older, pre-digital films, is that the special effects, I think before you had effects houses doing things, and you had other people just trying whatever, you had a lot more unique imagery coming out of special effects, because people were often just trying whatever they had and whatever they knew, and sometimes throwing in some new stuff, and basically not getting not a lot of repeatability in some aspects. But I'm trying to read more up on special effects history, because a lot of that stuff is kind of lost within old books and issues of magazines that I'm slowly culling through. But yeah, War of the Worlds, just the sound, the music, the color, it's an overwhelming experience. And, the characters are emotionally strong, I think. And as I go about all this stuff I'm talking about, all these films I love, and I really keep coming back to even a film like Rocket Ship XM. It's not great, but there's stuff in it that just sticks with you, like a lot of these films. And it's hard sometimes to recommend, because 50s science fiction film just becomes this blanket term, or this like bracketed kind of cubbyhole genre, and very maligned, I would say, when people just think it's, oh, that's cheesy, that's cheap, that's B movie, even though they don't understand what B movie means. I think I've seen people call War of the Worlds a B movie. Yeah, it has a giant poster hanging in Times Square during its release. Yeah, that's a B movie. So this book, Keep Watching the Skies, which really got me reinvigorated. I mean, I'm always have a vigor for 50s SF, but like this movie is really, it's full of love for these films. So this guy, Bill Warren, he wrote this book back in the 80s, and then he did a revised edition in the 2010s, I think, called the 21st Century Edition. So if you get it, try and get that one. But it's basically every single science fiction film from the 50s. I think he goes up to 1962, and he has some reasons for that criteria. But he describes the film, he gives an opinion on it, but you can see that he's doing this out of love, because there's something about these films that, brings him to them, and he grew up watching them. That's the great thing, too, because so many times I read stuff on these movies that's written by somebody closer to my generation looking back, and rather this is somebody who grew up when he saw these films in the theaters, and so he can tell you what the reaction was like. He can talk about how his classmates were so freaked out by The Thing from Another World that they barely even wanted to talk about the film. And that a film like that was very shocking at the time. And if you haven't seen it or don't know anything about what's in it, it would still have a lot of impact, especially when you put it in context of other films made around that time. And he also talks about, the theater going experience, but his opinions are, sometimes negative, but he's not here to trash these films. He's not condescending. He's taking the films and finding what little bits of merit there are in them. So there's a section when he's talking about This Island Earth, which is another really good one. But he has, I'll read a couple paragraphs right here, because it really gets to the heart of the matter of kind of a problem of looking at these films. So he says, which makes it annoying that it was trashed in Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. The TV series targeted awful movies, or at least movies in public domain. Occasionally, they took off on pretty good movies, but every film received MST3K's standard sneering dose of utter contempt. Defenders of the show claim the makers actually liked some of these films, but that seems unlikely, and is beside the point. For many people who liked these movies, the show was an ongoing irritation, breeding the dismaying idea that the most sophisticated response to a bad movie was sophomoric sarcasm. Intentionally or not, the series encouraged its fans to talk back to the screen, and discouraged any thoughts that these films might be worth taking seriously, if only in part, if only on a restricted level. But when MST3K moved into theaters, the film they chose to savage was This Island Earth, probably because it was in color, not because it was especially bad. So why didn't they eviscerate, say, Queen of Outer Space? Now the Misties, as the cultish followers of the show call themselves, will always regard This Island Earth with scorn and contempt. That's their loss. Unquote. So that's, what makes this book for me is, evaluating these films honestly, in good faith, even, wanting to see the good in them, and not being, trained to immediately see the bad, which so often happens. And that's the thing now too. Like, even when I'm watching movies with people, some people, it's like there was this sometimes a sort of an itch to just make little comments, to like riff it, and I'm just kind of thinking, well, are we going to try and enjoy the movie, or like what is the purpose of putting a movie on right now? And that's a whole other thing. Which, I'll do another video on screenings and stuff, but yeah. So, but getting to what I love about 50s science fiction films is there is a sense of wonder, sense of mystery, of the unknown. Sometimes I might lament, the less imaginative monsters or things, but there's something in a lot of them that's very compelling. Like, for instance, The Thing from Another World. I wish they had gone with the original intent of doing a really weird design for The Thing. Instead, they kind of went this Frankenstein route, but that doesn't make the movie worse. I think there were just some things that were kind of expected, and also Howard Hawks had his own idea of what he wanted to do. And then, reading this book, you understand, there's better stuff out there. There's more good things in the 50s SF films than I was aware of, like The Monster That Challenged the World. If you ever, go hunt that movie down, because it's a really good monster film about giant snails hatching in a kind of like inland sea in the western United States, with just this really well done scenes, suspense, good monster design, and some pretty impressive, I think, for the budget and the time. Like puppet, like they have a full scale puppet of this thing that they use to really good effect. And just you get ideas from different films, like like when the rest of the film doesn't come together, when the budget is just too small for the ideas and concepts that they're trying to put out, like the film Kronos, about this robot monster basically that comes out down to space and absorbs all energy and electricity, and just the design of it and the way it functions, it's really distinct from anything at the time. And them, you get just, it's just a really well produced movie. Like, you can tell it was made by people who wanted to do a good job and had, there's some fantastic scenes in that are just striking. Like that scene in Them that always sticks in my memory, and it's so quick, but there's like a nest of the ants that hatch on a ship, and all we have is that line from a telegraph or something, and we just dissolve to that real quickly, but just like that it's a throwaway line later that they sank the ship, but yeah, there's just the way they move through different scenes, different dramatic stuff. I think there's so much variety in the 50s that, yeah, to dismiss it, we really need to get this stupid Mystery Science Theater 3000 attitude. Just, we need to get it the heck out of here, because I used to like Mystery Science Theater 3000. I mean, there's still some funny stuff from it that I kind of like quote, but I kind of had to get over, it as an approach to movies. I think it did a lot of harm to people talking about movies on the internet. Like, gosh, when I was younger, I used to enjoy that guy with the glasses, like, crew, a lot of their kind of stuff, and then it kind of got tiresome, because you don't want to evaluate movies on that metric. So anyway, yeah, I'll probably be watching War of the Worlds because it's Halloween. So that's my tradition. I usually do. But yeah, that film too. The opening with all the Chesley Bonestell paintings, the sets showing the different planets and stuff. I almost never feel something like that scene elicits from anything like today. There's a few other things, but it's just such a special time in movie making where you have the methods of telling a story in film at the time mixed with fantastic things, and it comes together, and I hope you enjoy some as well. I hope you go out and seek more, especially seek out this book, Keep Watching the Skies by Bill Warren. So that's about it. Have a good night. Happy Halloween.